Originally inducted in 2002, tonight elevated to legend, Jason Dunstall.
Dunstall studying concentration. There goes the kick. It looks pretty good. It's another goal towards the premiership.
Into the goal square. Dunstall!
Dunstall, more importantly, goes for goal and he's got it. Another goal from Jason Dunstall.
Dunstall gets there. He's the one the Hawthorn legend is. Put it through in here.
And straight through the centre. Well done, Dunstall.
And here they come.
The half forward. Dunstall with the one hand.
You have been one of the night's most loyal attendees over 22 years, so you've seen so many of the people present inducted. How does it feel to be back up on stage 22 years on?
Really weird, really weird. But look, first and foremost, congratulations to all the other inductees. What you do work out very quickly is that this is the best night, bar none, on the AFL calendar. It's a special night that we just keep coming back to.
You've had a little bit of time to work out where the legend fits and how you feel about it. How does it sit with you?
Not great at the moment. It was interesting listening to Airsy's words. There's a lot of work that has gone into it, Jared, I must admit. I didn't exactly knock everyone over with my athletic ability when I came down. I think our very first session, the first time I started, the club was 85. We did a 5K time trial, which was 12 and a half laps as a 400 metre circumference at Glenfrey Oval. And I got lapped by everybody. And half a dozen of them lapped me twice, which meant I was immediately in the extra running group. So they would have extra groups on the weekend. So back then, pre-season, you'd train 5 nights a week because everyone worked or did something else. Monday, Wednesday, Friday would be running groups, and Tuesday, Thursday you'd work on your skills. But for those that missed a session, you'd have to do an extra running session on the weekend. I immediately got put into that group, despite the fact I was doing the 5 during the week. And we'd go down to Sandringham and run through the bushes. There's trails up on the cliff, and you'd do sprints down the ramps and back up. And the first time I went there, I got lost. I had to actually work my way back to the road to get back to the car park where we started. Everyone had gone except Alan Jeans, who gave me an absolute bake for wasting his time. So it's fair to say I was coming from a long way back. In fact, I can actually tell you, in 14 years of the club, I only ever beat 2 people in any form of endurance. One was halfway through the tenure. I remember we had a young man come down from the top end by the name of Willie Rioli. I don't think Willie had done a lot of conditioning. He looked like an 18-gallon keg with legs. Yet over that 12 and a half laps, he led me for the first 11 and a half, but I looked up. I would always be at the back. That's where I was expected to be. You'd put your head down, you try and work your way through the run, and I looked up with a lap to go and I got the shock of my life. I could actually see someone, and he wasn't that far in front. And I got the scent of my first kill, and it was invigorating, let me tell you. When you've never ever beaten anyone, it was invigorating. And I started to reel him in. With 200 to go, I was about to collar him. The unfortunate thing is all my teammates who had done the run and had a stretch and a warm down and a drink saw what was happening, and they yelled out to Willie, and he took off like a startled cat. And the people there, they swear to this day, it was very akin to Bone Crusher, our Waverley Star in the Cox Plate. That last 200 was neck and neck. I put my neck out on the line and I got him. And a week later, he was back in the top end, poor old Willie, unfortunately. And the other one I really like to talk about, because I got John Kennedy one day up at Xavier. We were doing some endurance running, and I ran past him, and in sheer embarrassment, I'm sure, he collapsed to the ground and claimed he had a heart issue. He took it so far as to actually get an ambulance, went to hospital and came back and said, I've got a heart murmur. But the bottom line is I felt strong that day and I got him. At least that's the way I see it.
There are so many days, Jace, just to pick a few. So the 86 grand final, which is significant on a few fronts, one of which is, in your heart of hearts, you hoped that this was going to be a Carlton story, didn't you?
100%, 100%. So I played a state game for Queensland in Tassie at the end of 84. I spoke to 3 clubs. All the selectors came down to Tassie, the recruiters, and I spoke to Hawthorn, Fitzroy and Carlton. Trained for a week with Fitzroy on the way home, with Scotty McIver, who ended up being a very good player for them and for Brisbane. Reports were that the skinny kid was good, but the fat kid was no good, so I didn't get a gig there. I barracked for Carlton because my mates and I all played for a club called Cooperoo back in Queensland, which had exactly the same jumper, a navy blue with a CFC, so we were all Carlton supporters. I would have crawled over broken glass to play for them, but they never called me back. So in the end, it ended up being Hawthorn, and eternally grateful for it.
So that day you're playing against Carlton, you're playing against Bruce Dool.
One of my heroes.
Yeah. What does Alan Jean say to you to get you up for the occasion?
Yeah, he pumped me right up. He said, make up for last year. I'd had a horror in my first year. We got thumped by Essendon. I reckon I touched it 3 or 4 times. Didn't hit the scoreboard, and he never mentioned it until the grand final the next year. And as we were about to run out in the field, he just tapped me on the shoulder. He said, make up for last year. When you think about it, it's probably not the greatest motivation, but he was a very simple man with his words, Yabby, and to play on an idol of mine like Bruce Dool, who had beaten me soundly in the semi-final, was a great thrill. Never said anything, Bruce. You just hear the odd grunt from him, but ever professional, and it was a thrill to play on him, and a greater thrill to win a premiership, of course.
Who were the great fullbacks that you duelled with across the journey?
There were a lot of them. It's impossible to go past Saucy's. The fullback of the century for a reason. He was incredibly quick and strong and agile and could whinge with the best of them and scrag with the best of them. But there were lots of great ones. Danny Frawley was another one, Mick Martin. There were so many. It was a great era where you got to have a lot of one-on-one contests. A very different game to today, but I still enjoy today's game.
And your contemporary was Tony Lockett. Was he always the point of comparison for you?
He was. Bloody annoying, Plugger was. You'd come off the ground having a good game where you've kicked 7 or 8, and because all the games were played at the same time back then, and you'd check the scores and you'd know that St Kilda had been flogged by 70 points and they'd only kicked 12 goals for the game, but Plugger had kicked 11 of them, and you'd actually fall further behind. So it became frustrating, but it was a very healthy rivalry, I think, which hopefully drove us both on. And
then there was a moment where you both got to play for Victoria, which you might have been more open to than he was.
Yeah, well, it was a thrill for me because I'm not a Victorian, and they kept changing the rules, and all of a sudden I'm eligible, and I got picked, and I'm at Victorian training with Tony Lockett at the MCG thinking, how good's this? And Plugger says, I'm going to have a chat to them. They've just got to pick one of us. There's no point both of us playing. And I thought, that's not exactly the repartee I was looking for from my good man Tony, but something happened, and something happened between the training session and the dinner we had afterwards, because EJ must have gotten his ear. And after we'd had dinner, it was EJ get up and said, Tony Lockett's got a few words that he'd like to say to the group. And he got up and he said, I'm so looking forward to playing alongside Jason. We're going to make it work and it's going to be fantastic. And I thought, this can't be the same bloke I was just talking to a couple of hours ago. But it was a great day. We flogged South Australia at the MCG, and we both kicked a few goals and had a lot of fun playing together.
It was an age where the full forward's job was to kick goals. It wasn't to bring it to ground and bring others into the game. We're kicking the bags and then kicking the tons. Were they a rite of passage?
They were. I mean, we stayed at home. We didn't travel a lot out of our zone. When the game was first becoming scientific, I'll never forget it, they did a study on one of our games and they clocked how far John Platten was running during the game, and it was about 18k. And they also clocked me, and I ran 1.2k. And my greatest fear was that may have included the warm-up. But what people don't understand is there was an incredible intensity with which I attacked that 1.2k. But never left the 50-metre arc. It was just, as I said, a completely different game. You stayed home, you got your one-on-one opportunities, and you had some amazing players kicking the ball to you. There
was a day where you gave the record of Fred Fanning a great shake. We saw it up there, 17 goals. Did you know what you were chasing?
No, I didn't, because I wasn't steeped in the history of the game, coming from Queensland, but it was just one of those days where the ball bounced into your hands. I got a couple of free kicks from the umpires, which we never ever got back then, and things just went really, really well. I remember the scoreboard at Waverley flashed up when I got to 16. It said that's a Waverley Park record, and I thought, oh, that's nice, but I didn't realise 18 was the actual record. Not that it made any difference, because I was completely rooted by the end of the game, and I couldn't have run another yard if need be. So it didn't quite pan out the way, but they did bring Fred Fanning, down during the week to have a chat at training, and he said 17.5. It's not bad. He said, geez, you're inaccurate though. Because he kicked 18-1. Now, 17.5, I think if you're kicking more than 3 goals per behind, you know, that's a 75% success rate, which is pretty elite. And he's just potting me for kicking 17.5, which I found amusing. But no, it was a great thrill. But, I mean, we didn't play for records. We played for premierships, and I was fortunate enough to play with a great club at a great time.
89 holds such a place in footy folklore. Does it for you as well?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That was just one of those classic games where they went incredibly hard at the man to be physical early, and we just played the ball as much as we could. We built up a good early lead, but I've got to tell you that last quarter there was a lot of clock watching going on. You didn't get signals from the bench how long to go or anything like that, and the longer the game went, the more trouble we were in. We had a few that were down, a couple that were hanging by a thread, and the Cats were coming hard. So it was a classic game on all fronts, and you had Gary Ablett doing Gary Ablett things, which was just ridiculous. But when the siren went, it was a great thrill. It was a classic game, and one that we'll never forget.
Do Yabby's words live with you from that day?
Yeah. It's funny when you talk about Yabby. He used to tell us stories all the time, and in the cold light of day, if you look at the stories, they're pretty rubbish stories. But the way he could tell them made them special, and the one that he told that day was about at half-time. He's talking about little Johnny that was given $100 to buy some shoes. And Johnny thought, well, if I buy the cheap ones for 50, I can put 50 in my pocket. But then the shoes gave way before he was finished with them because he didn't buy the good ones, and Yabby's message was all about paying the price. Now, that sounds like a really crappy story, I get it. But when he's in there thumping his hand into his fist, yelling, pay the price at the players, and, you know, the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up, and we've seen a couple of blokes KO'd and bowled over. It was very, very powerful, and he had a great way of relating to the players when he needed to.
The merger match, the last game of 1996, must be one of the most emotion-charged and eventful games that the Code's ever seen. It includes, surprisingly, 100 goals for you and the great uncertainty around what was going to happen next.
Yeah, there was a lot going on at the time. You know, we could very well have been looking at the two teams that were going to be one the following year, and we needed to win that game to make the finals. I think it was 9 short of 100. And there was a lot of talk about, you know, the financial state of both clubs and what was going to happen. And we ended up winning by a point. It was an incredible game. You know, there was some special acts in it. But the most poignant part of it all was to see Chris Langford, as we were walking off, take the jumper up and hold it to a crowd of... There was 63,000 there that night for a night game between Melbourne and Hawthorn, who were both basically outside the 8, which was a lot more than you would ever expect for that game. It was enormous, and mind you, if I looked like Langers, I would have taken my jacket off and waved it to the crowd too. But it was really, really powerful, and we made the finals, went out the next week. But that was the beginning of a turnaround for the club.
And your farewell game a couple of years later, how do you reflect on that these years on?
Not well. I'd broken a collarbone in the last game, missed the last 8 weeks, and Ken Judge was coaching, came to me, said, mate, do you want to play on? Do you want to retire? And I knew how bad my body was, and I mean, I would sit during games early that year, you'd have ice packs on both knees, sitting there saying, make sure you remember how bad you feel right now, because this should influence your decision. And so I said to him, mate, I need to retire. I'm done. I've got nothing left in the body. And he said, well, you better play a send-off game. Now, I hadn't trained for 8 weeks. I've already told you how good my fitness was. So after 8 weeks of not training at the end of the season, I was no good. But we were playing Freo out at Waverley, and that's a game that would have attracted about 15,000 people, and some incredible Hawthorn fans, about 40,000 of them turned up, which was great. I kicked the first goal of the game because I'd only just recovered from the stitch I got in the warm-up. Didn't touch it for the rest of the game. In actual fact, we were... You know, we weren't winning the way we should have, and I said to Ken Judge at 3/4 time, mate, don't be afraid to take me off, because I knew how badly I was going. And he just grabbed me and put me in front of the others and said he wants to come off. And he said, not going to let that happen. And the boys kicked 10 or 12 goals in the last quarter, and it was a fantastic win. So it was a great way to go out. Just the show of respect from all my teammates. It was brilliant.
In recent years, we've been able to look at the 1,000 goal kickers, and you're there at 1,254 behind Lockett and Coventry. What pride do you feel, or what sense do you feel when you see that list and what your place is in the goal kicking history?
Yeah, first thing that comes to mind, Jared, is third's no good. There are two ends of Marvel. One's the Lockett end and one's the Coventry end. There's not a third end to be named after me. So you've got to finish in the top two. No, look, I'm just chuffed that I got to play a great game at a great era with and against so many great players.
You've given so much to footy. When you think about your whole journey, what's footy given to you?
It's given everything. It's given me a life I never dreamed I'd have. I stumbled into this 40 years ago and I'm still here. So that's, I'm incredibly thankful for that. I never expected it. I wasn't aiming to do that. It's just something that happened along the way. So I hope I've given as much as I've taken from the game, but it's been an enormous part of my life.
A few thank yous to finish.
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, to all the other inductees, congratulations. Fantastic achievements. To family and friends, I've got a couple of brothers that came down from interstate. Mum couldn't make it, doesn't travel particularly well, but to have Nick and Harry here, and the three nephews, Josh, Joel and Jesse, who are so keen to dump me as soon as it's over and go hang with Swanee after hearing him talk. So you're going to have a little bit of weight on your hands, I think, Swanee. And a couple of special mates that have come down from Queensland, to be able to celebrate it with them makes it more special. To my junior club, the Cooperoo Footy Club, I played from the under-7s through to seniors. To all the coaches, all the teammates, all the great people that make a club what it is, thank you. To the Hawthorn Football Club, again, to all the coaches, to all the teammates, to all the volunteers, the great people, the trainers, the old Charlie Cheesecake, the property room manager, Andy Anglin, was a ripper. You just meet so many great people that do so much work. I'm incredibly thankful to all of them. To my teammates, especially at Hawthorn, any success that I may have enjoyed is entirely due to their efforts further afield. And I played with some of the very, very best the game has ever seen. To the people at Fox Sports, Foxtel, Fox Footy, my employers, I've had 20 plus years out of the game. I'm still working in a game that I love, with people that I love. It's incredibly special. I asked Jonesy not to steal the thunder tonight, but in that stunning gown, it's impossible. She's a great colleague of mine. It's great to have her emceeing the evening, so that's a great thrill as well. And finally, I must say to Richard and to Dills and to everyone at the AFL, as I mentioned, I'm living a life I never dreamed I'd have. To the selectors who deem me worthy to sit in the esteemed company of the gentlemen whose banners you see around the room. I'm privileged, it's an honour, it's a little confronting, overwhelming, almost to the point of embarrassment, but it's an honour for which I'm eternally grateful, and I thank you.